Revealed. The sinister blade that drinks demons' blood. A cursed horror from the shadows. Mia felt at the moment she stepped into her late grandfather's attic, a cold whisper that crawled down her spine like ice. The air crackled with eerie tension, shadows clinging to every corner, watching. She brushed aside the dust, memories buried under years of neglect turning into mental clutter. But what lay beneath the musty cloth knocked the breath from her lungs. An ornate, dark blade glimmered in the dim light, its edge stark and sharp, like a tooth ready to bite. The legends swirled back into her mind, tales of a cult that once thrived, only to vanish into whispers of darkness. The blade was said to give power, but at a dreadful price, the blood of demons. Mia chuckled nervously, rolling the myth around her head like a tossed coin. Demon blood? What even were demons in her world? Bills, sleepless nights, and the constant weight of worry were her only devils. But as she reached to touch it, an electric jolt shot through her fingers, a tingle that resonated deep within her like a heartbeat. What would she give to rise above this endless struggle, to claw her way out of the suffocating grip of poverty? In that moment, she felt a seductive call, promising everything she ever longed for. The days faded into autumn. Strange occurrences began to shroud their home. The streetlights buzzed, flickering, as if aware of something she had unleashed. Neighbors now shied away, their smiles flickering like dying flames. Children whispered in hushed tones, tales of shadows stalking at night. Mia's heart raced, a tight knot of panic forming in her gut. Ethan and Lily were too innocent, too pure for the twisted fate waiting by the dusk. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. One evening, while searching for Ethan, dread twisted deeper in her heart. The night felt heavier, a pressing weight that made her skin crawl. She opened the door to find him gone. Panic clawed at her throat as she hollered for him, each call swallowed by the dark. It was then that the chilling murmurs of the blade filled her thoughts, gnawing on her sanity. The truth poured into her mind like poison. She had unintentionally drawn something vile into their lives, an ancient hunger feasting in the silence. As she ventured outside, the rustling of leaves sounded like incantations. The flickering porch light cast devilish shadows, each step closer to the street filled with a sense of urgency, each shadow morphing into grotesque faces. Neighbors bowed under the weight of twisted secrets, their inviting smiles now deadly masks. Distorted whispers seemed to glide through the air, clinging to her feet, enticing her to join forces with something dark. Mia felt the knife-like edge of her desperation, and her heart thundered in relentless rhythm. Would she become the sacrifice? Or could she use the blade to unleash a horror she didn't fully comprehend? The foreboding truth coiled tightly around her trust was a fragile whisper now, boundaries blurred in dusk, almost fabric, threatening everything she held dear. She needed to act fast. Time was slipping through her fingers like the autumn leaves, and something unfathomable lingered just out of sight. Would she surrender to the blade's dark allure, or confront a terror rooted deep in her own neighborhood? The answers lay shrouded in the dim light, where shadows whispered her name. The wind howled in the streets, a desperate ghost yearning for something long lost. Mia's breath fogged in front of her, a white puff in the chill of night. Impulsively, she sprinted down the unlit path, heart racing, every beat a frantic drum echoing in her ears. She had to find Ethan. The shadows twisted around her like malicious fingers reaching from the darkness. Every crackle of a branch made her jump, the thought of what lurked beyond the veil of night sending jolts of fear through her. She clutched the blade, the cool metal a lifeline against the surreal terror engulfing her. What if she didn't have to be afraid? A shimmering between the trees caught her eye, a flicker of movement. Mia followed, hope and fear battling within her. Soon she spotted a group of children near the old playground, their laughter eerily reminiscent of the past, but twisted into something chilling. They danced around a flickering light, the flame leaping defiantly against the dark. "Mia, help!" Ethan's voice shattered the night, and her heart stopped. She rushed forward, eyes wide with frantic determination. The children's laughter turned to shrill cries, drowning in panic as they scattered like leaves in a storm. But not before she saw it, a figure cloaked in shadows, tall and imposing, standing where Ethan had been moments before. The darkness twisted around its form like liquid night. Her instincts screamed to run, to flee this foreboding entity, yet she felt anchored in place, her body locked by the magnetism of its gaze. Mia, the voice was a hiss, a whisper curling like smoke around her. "Join us now," she screamed, grasping the blade tighter, its sinister allure beckoning to her. She could sense its hunger, the promise of power tinged with madness. Suddenly, the figure lunged, a blur of shadow, and Mia's instinct took over. She swung the blade, the air slicing with a sickening thud as it connected. Darkness exploded in a cloud of black mist, tendrils curling away as if hurt. An unearthly scream reverberated through the night, chilling her bones. "What did you do?" A voice gasped beside her. Mia turned, astonished to see Ethan, wide-eyed and trembling. Relief washed over her, but the moment was short-lived. The flickering light dimmed, shadows bending closer, eager to wrap around them. "We need to go? Now," she urged, grabbing his hand, but the darkness was relentless. It seeped into the ground, creeping towards them, as if it had a life of its own. Panic bubbled up as they sprinted back towards the house. But with every step Mia felt the blade thrum, whispering promises of safety, of control. "What if I just know?" "We can't." Ethan pulled back, his small frame trembling. "You're scaring me." The truth hit her like a punch. She was the danger now. What had she unleashed? What had she become? They stumbled into home, slamming the door against the creeping darkness. The silence pressed in around them, thick and suffocating. But it lingered outside, growing in strength, taunting them, hungry for their fear. The blade glistened ominously on the table, the dim light casting a dreadful glow. Mia knew something crucial lay hidden within her grasp, something that could either save them or destroy them completely. As they stood, trembling, the door rattled and shadows clawed at the windows. She realized then the darkness wouldn't stop. How would they survive a nightmare that fed on their deepest fears? With each passing second, Mia felt the veil between their world and something terrible slip away. Would they make it through the night, or would the malevolent shadows consume them all? The answers hung thick in the air as the door shuttered again, a harbinger of the horrors waiting beyond. The rattling stopped, but the silence was a prison. Mia's heart raced, pounding so hard she thought it might break free from her chest. She could almost hear the blood rushing in her ears, drowning out the distant whispers lingering just beyond the door. What lay outside? Was it the same darkness that had chased them, or the remains of whatever horror she'd just unleashed? Ethan clutched her arm, nails biting into her skin. "What is happening, Mia? Why are we just stay quiet?" she whispered, her voice barely a breath. She stepped cautiously to the window, peeking through the faded curtains, the gnarled branches scraping against the glass like skeletal hands. Darkness blanketed the night, but as her eyes adjusted, she saw figures moving in the distance, a group of those children. Shadows darted like insects drawn to a flickering flame. Their laughter echoed through the chill, unnaturally bright, yet twisted, haunting her mind. The way they moved, quick, jerky, as if they weren't quite human anymore, made her stomach twist. Ethan's voice trembled. "They can't get in here," she said, forcing herself to sound steady. But doubt flickered like a candle flame in her gut, fueled by the memory of the shadowy figure in the playground. Suddenly, the sound of scratching began soft at first, then escalating as something clawed at the door. It wasn't the wind. It was relentless, hungry. The blade caught her eye again, taunting her from the table. Its grip glimmered, winked in the sparse light. She thought of its power, its promise. Could it protect them, or was it the temptation leading her to madness? "Don't think about it," she whispered to herself, fingers twitching dangerously close to the hilt. When had fear become so intoxicating? She took a deep breath, fighting the urge to take the blade. "Mia?" Ethan squeaked again, pulling her back. She turned to him, fear etched in his tiny face. "What if they get in?" The scratching grew louder. It vibrated through the walls, setting her teeth on edge, making her stomach churn. Then we fight, she said, her voice firmer than she felt. And we keep fighting. She reached for Ethan, gripping his shoulder to reassure him. But as she looked into his eyes, she realized he was losing faith. We need to do something. He looked around, desperate. What if the door burst open, splintering wood flying into the room? A cold wind howled in, swirling around them, dragging shadows like tendrils that snaked into the corners of the home. Mia? The voice resonated through the chaos, sounding like Ethan but layered with something darker. Help us. The word morphed into a chant, repeating over and over, a maddening lullaby urging her to join them. The room swelled with shadows. Mia felt their empty eyes on her, recognizing her fear, affording it power. She was trembling now, forcing herself to look away from the encroaching darkness. She couldn't give in. She had to protect Ethan. She couldn't allow herself to become another lost voice in the night. Then, out of the shadows, a face appeared, a child's face striped with darkness and light. It was familiar. Someone she knew. Mia, it whispered, its lips stretching into a crooked smile. Please come play. Without thinking, Mia snatched the blade, feeling its weight settle into her hand as power rushed through her like fire. She was the beacon, wasn't she? But as quickly as the confidence surged, shadows writhed around her, inky and insatiable. No, she yelled, raising the blade. Stay back. The chanting grew louder, engulfing her. Join us, join us, join us. What would become of her, of Ethan? Would she succumb? Would they be swallowed by the darkness that hungered for them? The shadows surged forward, merciless and overwhelming. They couldn't face this. She had to finish this now. She steeled herself, gripping the blade, soaking in the power coursing through her veins. But was she ready to fight against the darkness? Would she save them both or kill them in her desperation? As their silhouettes closed in, wrapping around her in a suffocating embrace, Mia felt the world blur around her. For the first time, she realized it may not be the darkness outside they needed to fear, but the darkness inside her. What would she become when she stepped into the abyss? Mia's heart thundered, the blade pulsing in her grip like a living thing, a seductive whisper promising power, but also doom. Shadows crawled closer, dark tendrils reaching out, wrapping around her limbs, dragging her toward an abyss she feared to even glimpse. Stay back. Get away from us, she screamed, channeling every ounce of fierceness she could muster. The chanting intensified, a haunting symphony wrapping around her, its notes sharp with despair. Ethan was frozen behind her, eyes wide, paralyzed by terror. Mia, don't. Please, I have to protect you, she barked, trying to push the shadows away, but they coiled tighter, feeling like icy fingers squeezing the breath from her lungs. Suddenly, the whispers changed. They twisted into a jagged laughter, mocking her resolve. You think you can fight us? Echoed a chorus of voices entwined in the darkness. You are one of us now. Mia's mind raced. Pieces of the puzzle clicked together, revelations piercing through the fog of dread. The blade, was it a weapon of salvation, or a key that unlocked her own darkness? Had she already made her choice by taking it? The darkness around her thickened, pulsing with anticipation, sensing her conflict. The shadows surged, and Mia swung the blade, the metal slicing through the bleak air. It cut a path of resistance, scattering the nebulous forms surrounding her for just a moment. Shivering, she felt a brief blaze of warmth, a flicker of hope. But as soon as it reached her, it faded, crushed under the weight of the darkness enveloping her once more. Behind her, Ethan's small voice creaked. Mia, you have to let it go. Let it go. The words sank into her. Letting go meant surrendering to the very evil she fought. But what if that meant saving Ethan? What if she could break this nightmare, not through violence, but by relinquishing the blade? The shadows hissed, sensing her wavering heart. Join us, they taunted, slathering her with unspeakable fears of failure, of losing herself, of eternal darkness. Mia's resolve cracked. But then she saw Ethan's face, pale and terrified, and a wild rage flared within her. This battle wasn't just for her soul, it was for his. Enough, Mia cried. She planted her feet firmly, the blade raised high above her head, breathing in power and fear, making it hers. Let him go, she roared, and with a surge of strength, she brought the blade down, swinging it like a beacon of light against the void. A blinding flash erupted, cutting through the shadows, burning away the darkness that threatened to consume them both. Mia stumbled forward, feeling the cold grip around her loosen and then disappear. She gasped as she found herself standing at the edge of the playground. But it wasn't the same. Shapes flickered at the corners of her vision, the laughter of children fading into a haunting silence. Ethan was right next to her, but his face was pale, reflecting her own horror. "Mia, what just happened?" I don't know," she whispered, fear creeping back in as the shadows recoiled, waiting for their moment to strike again. Had she conquered them or merely delayed the inevitable? The wind whipped violently, carrying whispering voices. "You can't escape," it hissed, sending icy shivers coursing down her spine. Mia felt that pull again, the abyss calling her name, and she knew this battle with the darkness wasn't over. "Ethan," she said, gripping his hand tightly, "we have to find a way out. We can't let them win." Before they could move, the night thickened further, transforming into a living entity around them. The playground faded from view, replaced by an endless sea of blackness. What awaited them in that void? Would the blade protect her or betray her? She realized they were far from safe, beyond the reach of ordinary terror. "Mia," came the echo of familiar voices, rising from the depths, beckoning her closer, those children, the darkness inviting her to embrace it all. For a moment, she hesitated. Was she ready to confront it again? Then, before she could gather her wits, the darkness swallowed them whole. What would they reveal on the other side? And could she hold on to her humanity while facing what lay ahead? The darkness enveloped them completely, suffocating any remnants of light or sound. Mia clutched Ethan's hand, their fingers intertwined, anchoring them to each other amid the chaos. The absence of sight turned every breath into a struggle against despair. "Mia, where are we?" Ethan's voice trembled, thick with fear. "I don't know. Just stay close," she managed, her heart racing. The weight of shadows pressed down, enveloping their thoughts. A desperate urge to flee clawed at her insides, but all direction was lost in the black abyss. Suddenly, a flicker of light appeared, a distant glow, pulsing like a heartbeat. It beckoned them, casting long shadows that danced around the edges of their vision. Mia, the glow was warm, inviting, yet it imprinted a sense of dread deeper than the darkness itself. "Do you see that?" Ethan pointed, his voice a scared whisper. "Yeah," she replied, hesitating. We should check it out." Together they ventured towards the light, each step filled with uncertainty. The air turned thick, almost viscous, dragging against their skin as they moved. It felt alive, something monstrous lurking just beyond perception. With every step, the shadows whispered again, their voices slithering through her thoughts. "You cannot escape your fate, you belong to us." Mia squeezed Ethan's hand tighter, a surge of defiance flooding through her. "Shut up," she yelled into the darkness. "Leave us alone." The mocking laughter echoed, stirring a cold rage inside her. She raised the blade instinctively, letting the cold steel touch the pulse of her determination. "You want me? Then come and get me." As if responding, the darkness quivered, swirling into grotesque shapes. Faces emerged, twisted and tormented, their eyes burning with despair. They reached through the blackness, fingers stretching, brushing against her skin. "Mia!" Ethan cried, instincts urging him to pull away. The faces morphed into grotesque masks of familiar childhood friends. Mia recognized their laughter, distant, yet eerily close. "Is that—" "No," she gasped. "It can't be." The shadows encroached, feeding off their fear. The children drifted closer, voices merging into a cacophony of laughter and screams. "Join us, Mia," they chorused, faces stretching into grinning masks. "It's much more fun here." The glow ahead faded, replaced by their torment. Mia felt the blade tremble in her grip. Was it a savior or a lie? Pulling back, she stood firm. "I won't let you take him," she shouted, raising the blade defiantly. Darkness surged forward, a wave trying to engulf them. Mia swung the blade, not with the intent to destroy but to protect. A flash ignited, as if the world had collapsed in on itself. For a heartbeat, everything held still. The shadows screeched, recoiling from the light, revealing the forms they had hidden within the dark. "I see you," she gasped, recognizing the frightened eyes of Ethan in the shadows, a boy left behind, lost, scared. Run! Mia screamed, pulling Ethan alongside her as they sprinted towards the dwindling light. The specters shrieked in anger, a whirlwind of despair swirling in their wake. The air pulsed with energy as Mia and Ethan reached the glow, a portal shimmering before them, a chance at salvation, a way out. Mia, wait. Ethan's voice pierced through the disarray. What? She shouted back, panic rising as the darkness crept closer. The shadows were relentless, gnashing unseen teeth. They want the blade, he cried. They'll follow us if you bring it. Could she really abandon the only shield she had against the darkness? But the alternative was unthinkable. The portal flickered, and uncertainty clawed at her heart. Trust me, Mia yelled desperately, releasing the blade. It clattered to the ground, echoing like a death knell, and the darkness howled in fury. As the shadows lunged, she pulled Ethan through the portal, leaving the blade and their fate behind. Where would they end up? What awaited them in the light? The questions swirled as the waves closed around them, engulfing them both again. Could the shadows be truly gone, or was this just another trap? Within another nightmare? The chilling laughter echoed in her mind as the light flickered, threatening to fade. What horrors lay ahead in the world on the other side, and could they possibly face them together? Light enveloped Mia and Ethan, but it was not the warmth they had hoped for. Instead, shadows lurked in every corner of their new surroundings, creeping along the walls like insidious vines. The air buzzed with a heavy silence, pregnant with a tension that gnawed at their nerves. What is this place? Ethan whispered, his voice barely escaping the tightening grip of fear. Mia scanned the dimly lit room they had stumbled into. Dust motes floated like spirits in the air, giving the space a ghostly feel. Old furniture lay in disarray, forgotten by time. A cracked mirror hung precariously on the wall, its surface marred and clouded, though she could still catch glimpses of flickering shadows behind her reflection. I don't know, she replied, stepping cautiously forward, her heart hammering in her chest. But we need to be careful. As they moved deeper into the room, Mia's pulse quickened. Echoes of distant laughter carried through the air, a sinister melody that stung her ears. It sounded as if the very walls were mocking them, weaving a tapestry of joy that felt hideously out of place in this desolate abode. Suddenly, the feeling of being watched washed over Mia, her skin prickling under an invisible gaze. She turned sharply, but there was nothing but the empty corners and peeling wallpaper. Did you hear that? She asked, her voice trembling. Ethan nodded, his eyes wide. Yeah, let us find a way out. Before he could finish, a chill swept through the room, swirling around them like an icy breeze. The shadows danced menacingly, and Mia's breath caught in her throat. From the depths of the darkness, fingers of shadow stretched toward them, claw-like and eager. Not again, she whispered, stepping backward, the fear bubbling in her throat. Then, from the depths of the gloom, a figure slowly emerged. It was the same childlike apparition she thought she had left behind in the darkness, the familiar face twisted with a horrific grin, eyes glinting with a malevolence that chilled her to the bone. Join us, it screeched, the laughter echoing from its mouth, blending with the shadows around it. You can't escape. Run, Mia yelled, grabbing Ethan's hand tightly. Their feet pounded against the rotting wooden floor. Desperate to escape the laughter and the encroaching darkness, they dashed past musty furniture, weaving around remnants of a life long gone, until they reached a heavy door at the far end of the room. With shaking hands, Mia grasped the handle and twisted, but it refused to budge. Panic surged through her veins. Push, Ethan urged, muscles tense beside her. As they hurled their bodies against the door, the shadows amassed behind them, swirling faster, roaring with fury. The door shook ominously, splinters flew, and a gust of wind howled through the cracks, adding to their dread. Suddenly, the door gave way with a loud crash, sending them tumbling into the corridor beyond. They landed on cold, damp stone, gasping for breath. What met their eyes was far worse than what lay behind them. The corridor stretched infinitely in both directions, dimly lit and writhing with dark, swirling shapes that whispered their names, chilling the air with an oppressive presence. The shadows pressed in like a living thing, breathing against them as they stood, frozen by fear. Ethan's voice trembled again, barely above a whisper. What do we do now? She felt the weight of despair pressing down on her. We have to keep moving. We can't let them catch us, but what lingered in the shadows, was it merely darkness, or something worse? With every step, the walls seemed to close in, reflecting the terror in Mia's heart. The flickering of light grew dimmer, the laughter creeping back, sinister and relentless. And then they heard it, a low growl deep within the darkness, rumbling like thunder, promising pain and despair. "We're not alone," Ethan breathed aloud, the implications settling like a rock in her stomach. What emerged from the shadows next would test their courage to the limit. Would they succumb to the darkness, or could they find a way to break free from the clutches of horror slowly unfurling before them? They pressed forward, hearts racing, the growl echoing louder behind them. Each step felt like a tread on brittle glass, fear threatening to fracture their fragile hope. Shadows swirled around, more aggressive now, as though they were aware of their escape, eager to swallow them whole. "Can you see anything up ahead?" Mia asked, trying to peer into the suffocating darkness. A sliver of light beckoned in the distance, a flickering beacon that gave off a faint, one-dimensional glow. "I don't think so," Ethan replied, his breath catching as he glanced back. A shape moved in the swirl of black behind them, a monstrous silhouette with glinting eyes that were hungry, waiting for the right moment to pounce. Their footfalls thundered in the silence as they raced towards the light. The whispers became clearer, a cacophony of malicious laughter mixed with crying, an eerie serenade that twisted their minds. They were darting into the unfathomable, but the light promised something: safety, or perhaps another hell. "Keep going, don't stop," Mia urged, squeezing Ethan's hand tighter. With every labored breath, she felt the shadows gnawing at her heels, pulling at her clothes, and trying to drag them back into the dark depths. As they bolted forward, the growl morphed into a snarl, the sound slinking up their spines, making their legs shake. Mia stumbled, nearly losing her footing. "I can't," she began, but Ethan's grip was firm. "Just a little further," he urged, fueling her resolve. The light shimmered brighter as they neared, illuminating a heavy door that looked like it had seen centuries. It was engraved with intricate designs that seemed to dance in the flickering glow, a stark contrast to the chaos around them. Mia reached for the door, her fingers brushing against the cold metal handle. But before she could twist it, the shadows pulled back momentarily, forming a twisted visage just beyond the light. "Stay with us," the voice dripped like honey dipped in venom, echoing through the corridor as the figure emerged. It was a grotesque parody of a child, eyes swirling with black pools of despair, and its mouth twisted into a grin that felt like spikes driving into her chest. "Open the door," Mia demanded, panic surging. With a heave, Ethan tossed himself against the door, a primal scream erupting from his throat, mingling with the cries coming from the shadows behind them. The door gave way with a reluctant creak, revealing an expansive room that felt alive, pulsing with energy. The light flooded over them, washing the creeping shadow away, but it did not extinguish the whispers, which became louder and more vivid inside. "What now?" Ethan asked, glancing around in distress. The room was adorned with strange symbols and relics, illuminated by an unnatural light coming from an altar at its center. A dagger, enchanted with ominous energy, sat there glistening, and for a moment, Mia felt drawn to it, a beacon amidst the horror. "Mia, stay away," Ethan warned, his eyes wide with dread. "I can feel it," she murmured, her steps taking her closer against her will. A sudden chill filled the air. "It's calling to me." The shadows, no longer able to invade the light, shrieked in fury. They lashed out, clawing at the edges of the room, forming a tempest of rage and desperation. "Don't get distracted," Ethan shouted, yanking at her arm, but it was too late. The dagger pulsed, and with its call came a flood of visions, terrifying images of blood and loss, a past wrapped in darkness. "Mia, listen to me," he cried, fighting against the magnetic pull towards the dagger's blade. But as she reached for it, a shadow launched itself forward, shrieking with a hunger that could swallow worlds whole, and darkness threatened to envelop them once more. "Get back," Ethan shouted, positioning himself between Mia and the encroaching doom. But the shadows were relentless. The dagger's blade thirsted, and as their fates intertwined with the darkness closing in, Mia felt her resolve wavering. Would they harness the power of the cursed relic, or would it consume them, binding them forever to the shadows? The growl returned, deeper than before, echoing with a final warning. And then, the world went black. In that suffocating void, only one question remained. What price would they pay for their salvation? Light burst back into existence, searing Mia's eyes. She blinked, momentarily blinded, and staggered back, disoriented. The oppressive darkness receded, but its suffocating presence didn't vanish completely. She felt an urgency, a pulse of malevolence that hinted at the chaos just beyond their fragile sanctuary. What just happened? Ethan's voice trembled, pulling her back to reality. He was scanning their surroundings, breath uneven and eyes wide. Did we escape? Mia stammered, trying to steady herself amidst the tumult of her racing heart. No, not yet. Ethan barked, looking over his shoulder as if expecting the shadows to surge forward once more. The altar dominated the space, and the dagger remained a sinister promise glinting in deceptive light. A low moan echoed around them, a sound that seemed woven from regret and longing. It filled the air, smothering their senses like a fog. The symbols etched on the walls flickered, alive, twisting and morphing in sinister patterns. Ethan stepped forward, searching her face. Don't let it get to you. Whatever it is, it's a trap. As if in response, the dagger pulsed again, luminous and captivating. Each throb resonated not just through the air, but through her very bones. I can feel something, she murmured, a haunted look in her eyes. No. Ethan's shout was sharp, cutting through the spectral whispers. We can't trust it. He moved to pull her back, but she was already stepping toward the altar, her feet moving as if controlled by an unseen force. Mia's voice cracked, but Mia was lost in a reverie. Visions swirled, faces elongated in anguish, cries echoing from her past, shadows of forgotten memories clawing at her mind. She saw herself at the center, trapped in a web spun from her deepest fears. A world of blood, pain, and tragedy unfurled before her, enticing and repulsive. It can help us, it knows no. Ethan lunged forward, grabbing her waist. With a desperate yank, he pulled her back, breaking the spell. We can't give in. In that moment, fury punctuated the air. The shadows hissed, furious at their defiance, but their mournful cries began to shift, morphing into something chillingly profound. Join us, they whispered. Let the darkness embrace you, Mia shuddered. The words sank deep into her psyche like a dagger twisted deep in her gut. Ethan, they want us, she gasped, feeling the shadows entwine her legs, tugging her back toward the abyss. Ethan's face hardened. No, you're stronger than this. He dug his nails into her arm, and she could feel his determination pouring into her through their connection. Fight it. With every ounce of will, she tore her gaze from the dagger and clutched Ethan's arm. The shadows howled in protest, an angry wind whipping through the chamber, scratching at their skin with icy tendrils. Look, Ethan shouted, pointing across the room. A doorway shimmered, barely noticeable at first. It radiated a subtle light, a stark contrast to the chaos surrounding them. Run, he urged, his voice a desperate plea. But as they turned, the shadows whipped violently around them, coiling like serpents. You cannot leave, the price must be paid, they chanted, their voices intertwining into a phantasmal crescendo. Mia's heart dropped at the darkness surging forward, engulfing the sanctity of their newfound hope. What price? She yelled into the chaos. Your souls. It was a guttural voice now, primal and ancient. With terror clawing at her throat, Mia pulled Ethan toward the door, her legs heavy under the weight of dread that threatened to crush her. Go, I'll hold them off. Ethan shouted, turning to face the advancing shadows. No, we go together, she insisted, panic surging anew. Time slowed as the shadows coiled tighter. The dagger's light flickered ominously, echoing with the promise of both salvation and doom. Face your demons, or be consumed. The voice roared, drowning out their frantic thoughts. They edged toward the threshold, hesitating. We'll never escape if we don't face it, Ethan shouted, but darkness loomed closer, ready to consume them. Then let us do it together, Mia cried, eyes fierce with determination even as the shadows reached for them. As they stood at the brink of the doorway, a haunting question reverberated through the chaos. What part of themselves were they willing to sacrifice to escape the horrors that awaited them? Just then, with a deafening crack, the ground shook beneath them. Would they be able to cross into the light, or was it too late to outrun their fate? The ground trembled, reverberating with the fury of ancient horrors. Mia and Ethan held tight to each other, faces pale with fear, hearts racing like thunder. Time was unraveling, the shadows creeping ever closer, seeking to drag them back into the abyss from which they fought to escape. Now, Ethan shouted, propelling them forward as they both jolted to action, unwilling to let darkness claim them. The doorway's glow flickered, a beacon of hope lodged within the chaos. But as they moved, the shadows shifted. Shrieks filled the air, a cacophony of tortured souls. "Stay, join us," they wailed, their voices mingling, each plea dripping with despair. The weight of regret pressed against Mia, stones of guilt and fear binding her to the floor. "Keep running." Ethan's voice pierced through her uncertainty, yanking her toward the threshold. But then, an icy wind roared around them, strong and relentless. Desperate to cling like the ghosts of their past, they lunged for the doorway, the light beckoning them closer, yet pushing them back as if it were the final barrier between salvation and doom. Mia's foot landed heavily, slipping in the slick, oily darkness. She stumbled, heart pounding in her chest, gasping as the shadows launched toward her, black tendrils ready to ensnare. "Mia!" Ethan grasped her hand, pulling her upright, but the relentless whispers wove around them. "You're not meant to be free, you can't leave." The words felt like barbed wire, digging in, urging her to give in, to succumb. "No," she screamed, fighting against the tide of despair. She racked her mind for strength, for memories of light. The warmth of laughter, the smell of rain-soaked earth, the sounds of a world devoid of this darkness. She clenched her teeth, channeling everything she had into breaking free. The altar flickered, the dagger flashing against her vision, slicing through the chaos with cruel clarity. "Ethan, the dagger!" Mia shouted, pointing. It still pulsed with that sinister light, calling them, promising power if they were willing to pay the price. "They want you," Ethan cried, fighting against the shadows still snapping at their heels. Dread pooled in her stomach as the shadows whispered her name, a morbid invitation filled with temptation. "Embrace us. Mia, you can be powerful, just let go." "No," she countered, shaking her head violently, digging her heels into the ground. Ethan's grip on her tightened. The door's invitation felt like salvation, a breathtaking breath after an eternity underwater. "Focus on the light," Ethan shouted, his voice strained but resolute. "We can't give up." Together, they stumbled toward the doorway, shadows twitching, the darkness raging as if the very walls howled in protest. With every step they took, Mia could feel the cold hatred yearning to consume them, 1,000 eyes watching, waiting. Then, abruptly, the trembling floor buckled again. A loud crack erupted, and the chamber shuddered. The dagger flared, the shadows screamed, and in an instant, a chasm opened beneath them. Mia's heart dropped to her stomach as they teetered at the edge. "Ethan," she gasped, the nothingness yawning wide beneath them. "Jump," he urged fiercely. Now, in that gut-wrenching moment, time stretched thin. They either leaped into liberation or tumbled headlong into oblivion. The air crackled with tension, the whispers turned into a furious howl, a storm of lost souls chanting, "Yield to us or fall forever," and with that, in a desperate act of defiance, they leaped hand in hand into the blinding light, plunging into the unknown, the darkness roaring its protest around them. But as they fell, shadows swirled below, stretching out like hungry tendrils, ready to swallow them into a void of despair. Would they escape, or was this merely another cruel trick of fate, a mirage of hope within a world soaked in darkness? Mia and Ethan tumbled through the blinding light, bodies weightless in the swirling chaos, until, with a sudden thud, they landed on cold, unyielding ground. The light flickered, flashing like a heartbeat, illuminating their surroundings, a barren landscape bathed in an eerie twilight. Shadows lurked at the edges, whispering taunts like hissing serpents. They scrambled to their feet, Ethan's hand clenching Mia's more tightly than ever. "Where are we?" Fear laced his voice, echoing the dread pooling in Mia's chest. "I don't know," She breathed, scanning the horizon, a wasteland painted in grays and muted colors. The ground cracked and splintered, remnants of lives lost to time. The darkness hung like a miasma, hinting that they were far from safe. But their moment of respite was short, for the shadows they thought they had escaped were already spilling into their new world, slithering across the ground, ensnaring everything in their path. "They're coming," Ethan yelled, panic surging again. "Run," she commanded, pulling him along as they dashed toward a distant tree line barely visible against the dim abyss. Every step felt like a race against despair. The darkness howled and clawed at their backs, determined to reclaim its hold. As they ran, fragments of laughter echoed around them, twisted and wrong, a cacophony of familiar voices that sliced through Mia's resolve. "Mia," they taunted, voices entwined with shadows. "Join us, you cannot escape." But she stumbled forward, determination and fear propelling her. "Stay close," she shouted back, her heart racing. The gnarled trees loomed closer, and her mind screamed at her. "Confront the darkness. Do not let it take you." Suddenly, as they approached the tree line, a gust of wind hurled their hair back, a deceptive warmth brushing against them like a fleeting kiss. The shadows shied away, driven back by the sudden, fierce light that ignited within the grove, revealing a clearing where a large stone stood, etched with symbols that glowed in ethereal hues. "This way," Mia urged Ethan as she dashed toward the stone. She could feel the weight of the shadows lurking just out of reach. The whispers flickered at the edges of her mind, urging surrender in maddening chorus. "Don't let it touch you." Ethan's warning slipped through labored breaths as they reached the stone. Its light thrummed against their souls, resonating with the strength they both desperately needed. "What do we do?" Mia placed her hand against the stone's surface, feeling its energy pulse like an echo of their hearts. "I think this is a way out and escape." She glanced back as the shadows approached, thicker and more sinister now, swirling into a mass of writhing forms. "Feed on their power," the voices begged, luring her closer with promises of safety tinged with threat. "I want to be yours," Mia shouted defiantly, channeling her will into the stone. The warmth spread through her, a tether pulling her away from the edge of darkness. "Mia, please." Ethan's eyes were wide with fear and awe. "We can't let them win. Not after everything we've been through." "Together," she said, determination hardening her voice. "We're stronger together." With a nod, Ethan pressed his palm alongside hers on the stone, a united front against the darkness that hungered for their souls. The moment their hands met, the glow brightened, burning fiercely against the encroaching shadows. Light erupted from the stone, a blinding ray searing through the darkness, dispersing it with each heartbeat. The shadows screamed as the light swallowed them whole, echoing fractured memories of laughter and cries morphing into silence. Emotions surged through Mia, mingling anger with relief, hope shining through the despair. "Now, we need to let it in," she urged Ethan, focusing on the object before them, an anchor of light beneath the swirling mass of shadows. The final wave of darkness lashed out, desperate to reclaim them, but Mia and Ethan tightened their grip on the stone. "Let it in," she cried, pouring all of their shared pain, struggles, and unyielding love into the pulsating glow. In a torrent of brilliance, the light exploded outward. Mia closed her eyes, feeling a gust of wind and a sense of weightlessness. They were submerged in brilliance, a cleansing wave washing over them, purging the remnants of fear, doubt, and despair. And then, silence, the heavy stillness enveloped them. Mia blinked slowly, adjusting to the warmth cascading around her, rays of sunlight streaming down from the azure above. They stood not in darkness, but in a sun-drenched meadow. Birds chirped, and the air was sweet with wildflowers. "Is it over?" Ethan asked, disbelief etching itself on his features. Mia sighed, her heart swelling as tears brimmed in her eyes. "I think it is." They were free, the shadows confined to whispers of memory behind them. With a last glance over her shoulder, Mia felt a weight lift, the echoes of darkness now silenced. "We made it, Ethan. Together." And as they turned to face the open world before them, laughter spilled into the air, not chilling but bright and carefree. They ran forward, hand in hand, into the embrace of sunlight, That warm promise of a life not defined by the darkness they had conquered. But before they took another step, a thought sparked within Mia, a realization. Each new day would be a choice, the shadows never fully gone. Yet they wouldn't face it alone. They held the strength of each other, unbreakable against any storm. "Let us go," she whispered, pulling him along. Into the light. As they ventured into the bright horizon, with each footfall, they forged a path of hope, ready to build their new beginning. If you loved this thrilling conclusion, you need to subscribe now to catch the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep these tales alive. Flood the comments with your thoughts, reactions, and theories about what you just experienced. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this epic finale. Your support means everything to keep the channel thriving.